j'ai complètement oublié. Et nous venons de voir à travers le papier de Cardoso à quel point le portugais était important et même est devenu une partie du substrat pour le parler français de Pondichéry. Et maintenant, nous allons écouter la professeure Jungbluth.
Yes, just to make the link with the other talks before, I think the Portuguese were particularly experts in bringing people together and in creating new ways to speak at each place. And I'm going back 450 years. I do not have as much, I do not have audio files. Nothing is left of these people. But there are sources from Dutch origin and other places where, which were important and where you have word lists and some information also on the missionary letters and other sources like that. So not as much language as we are looking for, but I think the cultural problem is in the creolization is also very important, and maybe I start with that. Thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very grateful to you, Sally, for giving me the opportunity to present part of my ongoing research on Kust-Portugees, Kust-Portugees, as it was named by the Dutch, and I'm very much looking forward to our discussion. I hope I leave enough time for that. My talk is on the emergence of Kust-Portugees. Kust-Portugees, I'll focus particularly on the encounters along the Gold Coast and beyond in early modern times, so 500 years back. I follow Enoch Abo in considering all our languages as creolized tongues, the standard languages as the other ones. At Tübingen, my supervisor, Brigitte Schlieben-Lange, was convinced that Romance languages should be considered as Creole language varieties of Latin, on a par with and as prestigious as, for example, Aishen, the Creole spoken in Haiti. Latin speakers moved in places outside of Rome, outside of Italy, and the language contact these migrants and their local interlocutors experienced and still are experiencing today in their new places gave rise to Latin Creoles. We name French, Portuguese, Catalan, Romanian, in very much the same line as Edgar Schneider, Salikoko already mentioned, defends that Middle English has to be considered as a Creole due to language contact. It emerged among second language speakers or even third, fourth, fifth, whatever language speakers in a diglossic scenario when the habla culta nobles spoke was no more English but French. I will present a similar scenario where speakers along the Gold Coast started to use Portuguese as a language of communication, Africans and Europeans, Jews and Arabs. They created, maybe Turks, that was mentioned by they created together their Portuguese, Kust-Portugees, language varieties to socialize, to trade, to build the harbors and towns in a region called Rios de Guinée, a region forming part of the Gold Coast. Sorry for starting directly. There is this structure you have seen on the slide. The first slide was missed. A language contact in settings such as Portuguese overseas expansion, Luso-African encounters. Who are the interlocutors creating Kust-Portugees? Which are the languages in contact? And what is about the making a language not in a political sense, but in a social sense? I'm coming back, I'm taking up the idea of Cape Verde as a place which is important in that context. And I go along the examples in my presentation, talking a little bit about syncretism and hybridization, which is the topic of our colloquium. Oops. Now. As you may see, I changed the header as I think the euphemistic term exploration used by Gardani in 2022 sounds inappropriate in post-colonial times. Expansion indexes Elmina in today's Ghana, which was the first case in West Africa where Europeans, here Portuguese, successfully negotiated land ownership. Please have a look at the map. It shows the three places I will make you familiar with: Lisbon, Praia, the capital of Cape Verde, and the close-by Cidade Velha, old city, which is called Ribeira Grande today. On the Gold Coast, I refer to the so-called Rio Sigine, as I already said. And you see that the seaborne Portuguese Empire was closely related in those times to water. Beside of the sea itself, rivers were most important. These Rios de Guinea refer to Senegal River, Cacheu River, and several others. It does not include the Volta Delta, so this is the margin we are talking about. My focus is on the first Portuguese fort, a feitoria on African grounds, founded to exert control in the name of the Portuguese king on all commodities which were interchanged, stored, and transported, comparable to a custom office, but also involved in all kinds of legal affairs. It was quickly surrounded by a growing town, which in the Africans called Edina. I will come back to that point, and you see it up there. Providing all the services an uprising urban or at least town needs: foodstuffs, potable water, craftsmen, tradesmen settled with their families. Later on, school was established and the church is part of the Elmina castle. Our trips will start at Lisbon, the thriving hub of that time, the place to go, particularly on the famous Rua dos Mercadores, the Merchant Street, the first paved street in the former Algarve region. Offices of merchants from other parts of Europe were also opened there, among them Fugger from Augsburg. They were negotiating on how to invest in these armada structures the Portuguese used for going to West Africa and further on looking for the street to Asia, by the street by water to Asia. Our topic of hybridization and syncretism is already audible in the very naming of the harbor. The Arabs called the place Al-Mina, a natural harbor. The Portuguese refer to the same place as Elmina, the mine, indexing gold mining. Ashun, representing the autochthonous African ethnicity of Twi, part of Akan and Mande languages, speakers refers to it as Edina, village. Whether we can understand that as a semantic syncretism, I'm not so much sure, because actually the naming also makes different perspectives on the same object in the world. So it's kind of convergence in a sense of making it different from different points of view. It's hardly surprising that features which show congruence across languages are the ones selected out of the pool. One factor that plays an important role, I'm citing Mufwene 2008, one factor that plays an important role in the weighting of the variance in a feature pool formed in a multilingual ecology is congruence. That is, the fact that structural features that are similar across languages reinforce each other and are favored for selection. The same is defended by Negrau and Viotti forthcoming. Following Baptista's distinctions among different types of convergences, we have to discuss whether this example can be considered as semantic congruent. We'll come back to that later. What you see also is a reference to the very important book of Annemarie Jordan-Gschwendt and Kate Lowe. They are experts in art, and you will see some redrawn scenes of that book on the next slide. Here. What is important not only for linguists but for our discussion in general on the contact is that these scenes are showing dense entanglements between black and white people becoming Lisboetas at Lisbon. And the whole picture is covering the King's Fountain and movements around the King Fountain. And there are many blacks among the people shown on that picture. and it was only recently discovered, or rediscovered if you want. This is also interesting that now there is much work and much research in neighboring areas on Cape Verde, for example, by people from Cambridge in archaeological dimensions on the Cidade Velha. And in this case, it was by chance that in a British context, they discovered these paintings, which were not known to show the King's Fountain of Lisbon. This Cidade Velha, I'm now going to that map. On the left side, you see a Portolano, which is a map of the stopovers along the coast to Africa. It's stored at the very important Geographical Association in Lisbon, and so far not published. It's it's turned upside down, if you want. The north is up there. The north is not up there. The north is down here, and the up you are in the south. And this is very spectacular for more maps of that time. This one is from José Monteiro Salazar. He was a captain in 1750 and 1789. So you see that this society of geographers in Lisboa, they have a lot of stored material which are not explored so far in research, which are not used so far in research. I hope to find more on these entanglements also from a linguistic perspective. If you go down that map, you see the two scenes at the right form part of a big picture, probably of a Dutch, maybe Flemish painter, showing the first paved street of Lisbon, the place to go, the place to open offices, as I already said. The painting is unique for its content. It shows the people and some of the products, among them living animals from Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Citing Lowe, one of the authors presenting the global city on the streets of things. The real revelation of this painting is the density of the entanglements it shows between black and white people, between those who are already Lisboetas and those in the process of becoming Lisboetas. That Creole languages are important for belonging is, I think there is no controversy among us on that point. For example, you see the two women close to one another, one black and the other one white, carrying water on their heads. If you think that this is exotic and that such social practice has been limited to southern or far west Europe in early modern times and beyond, this is not the case. Such practice was widespread also in the middle of Europe. Indeed, close to the international airport of Frankfurt towards the Rhine, you can still today touch pillars of a certain altitude which allowed women and everyone who carried commodities on her or his head to put them for a while on the top of these stones in order to have a rest, to breathe, before continuing the transport to the next market or other destinations along the riverside. The same holds true for Esslingen, the town I was born, close to Stuttgart, where the riverside quarters and the upper town are connected by steep paths. At its entrance, you may take a picture of such a stone pillar. However, you are right. The famous Merchant Street, Rua Nova de Mercadores, offered luxury products from all continents. Citing again Lowe, Portugal maintained diplomatic relations with many sub-Saharan African countries, and as a consequence, black African ambassadors and their entourage were often to be seen in Lisbon. In the course of 1515, for instance, 3 ambassadors from the West African countries or kingdoms of Congo, Cayor, and Benin are known to have been in Lisbon, and there could have been others. If we go back to 28 years earlier, during the reign of João II, Hieronymus Münzer, an Austrian German, admired the plurilingual environment of the Portuguese court in the following terms. The King of Portugal kept a group of Negroes of different colors who could speak Portuguese and who would try to speak to the newly captured slaves. The king used these interpreters, and some of them were called Turgimaus. So I'm taking up the Turk, the question about the Turks. Sorry? The king used these interpreters when distinguished visitors from Guinea were received. This is a citation by Hare, 1966. For example, when an envoy from the Oba of Benin or Yolof Prince visited. I want to draw your attention also to the scene on the left side, which doesn't belong to the big picture, but is by another painter, Antonio de Holanda. I think this black adolescent is very important here. It's interesting that the Portuguese family and the adolescent black are sharing the table, demonstrating social inclusion of the African Lisboetas. So there is no segregation, there is no distance. There are quarters of Jews, they are segregated in a sense, but for the African Lisboetas, there is no historical knowledge about anything which makes them different. This is also due. This is also a result, in my understanding, of the experience the Portuguese had in the south of their own country, in the context of Reconquista, when there have been many people from North Africa with them, and some of them stayed. They didn't all go back. So they had a lot of experience with coming together and even with being a part of. Even more surprising, I think, is his position on the table. His position represents the head of the table. It's fascinating that the Kust-Portuguese lexeme audible in Cabo-Verdiano calbicera and its variants cabicera, cabilcera may be used to refer to first a head of a bed, summit, so these are also metaphorical interpretations of the idea of the head, and also head of a bed, or metaphorically the use of the two extremes of a rectangular table, which may be also glossed as place of the headman. This is based on Cabo-Verdiano, as I already said, and the lexemes of cabe and cabeza, which mean head. I'm referring here to the dictionary published in German and Portuguese by Lang, 2002. The composition is hybrid as its origin is Portuguese, however, shows the derivational integration of a Latin morpheme, which is aire, which is place. In Sally's words, welcome to complexity, I may add to diversity of languages, big and smaller language communities we have at place. I want to mention also the multilingual ecologies following Jagbo and Muiskin 2017. I come back on that point on the next slide, while the examples in the chapter on language contact and borrowing by Gardner are limited to 2 languages. This is 2022. In the context I'm focusing on, there are in all places many languages, many tongues. Here you have the cut off the map in order to make the places visible and to see which kind of people are interacting in Lisboa, who are the people in Praia and who are the people in Elmina. And you see different L2, L3, L4, L5 speakers of other European descendancy present among them. They are part of the crews, they are healers, they are doctors, they are experts in several senses, navigation, for example, but also building ships and repairing ships. There are multilingual Jews, maybe even Moros, maybe even more multilingual than some of the speakers of other European descendancy, and Muros people from Mauritania. As you see, all these form part of the society in Lisbon. And part of them are going with the ships because their knowledge is needed on the ships. I consider that the Portuguese men who went illegally, not with the permission of the king, to Rios de Guinée, and who stayed at Rios de Guinée, and they even had marriages with African women, which are called calicer. So you see again this derivational morpheme of Latin, which refers to place. And the people who are really the first speakers speaking Kust-Portuguese are their children. And they are called filhos da terra in Cabo Verde. In Cabo Verde, in Cape Verde, it plays a particular role because it was unsettled until the Portuguese came. So everyone who went there after was kind of building a new society in a new place. So they didn't have to discuss or make their living on coast of people who were there before. You see here another reference to these sources. Römer 1760 is one of them, and Winsness 2000. What is important is also Towerson in 1555 tells us that Elmina words are used, so Mina words in his wording, and Dakubo, who is a Dutch linguist, who is a Ghanaian linguist, and they're particularly interested in the Dutch sources, talks about a strong local flavor of the Kust-Portuguese which arises among these groups. We have the African men and women at the Force, in the Feitorias, in the Elmina, a strong presence of the small group of Africans who lived there before, but it was very attractive to come close to Elmina due to this interchange of products, and so the Edina village, if you take the African term, it did become more crowded and more crowded. The Africans and the Portuguese were the first settlers, as I already said, at Praia, at Cabo Verde, in the Ilha de Santiago. It's important to know, and you see it here in green, that there are isles which belong to the north, Palavento, and the other ones which belong to the Sotavento, to the windward side, and they are closer to Africa. So if you go to Cabo Verde, you can also see nowadays that the people in São Vicente, in Mindelo, for example, closer to Lisbon, and first place to come from Lisbon, are of another composition, are behaving different and are looking different than the ones you meet at Santiago and particularly at Praia. I come back to that citation of Gardani. Language contact typically involves individual users. Yes, we agree. Or a whole speech community, or two speech communities or more, acquainted with at least two languages. I was surprised when I read his article in Handbook of Romance Linguistics that all the examples which appear in that article are only about two languages in contact. So this is a very limited vision also in a Romance context, because we do not consider only the standard languages as languages. We consider all the dialects as equally languages, not as a different kind of language, only in political terms or historical terms, but not in their structure, not in their way of expression. And then to talk only about two languages in contact in a very prestigious handbook, I think that is a shortcoming of that in that sense. I was also surprised that he called it still exploration. I think exploration is not the right word in this context. It's too euphemistic in post-colonial times to talk about Portuguese exploration. You have that difficulties often when you use earlier sources. I entered here for the ones who are not so familiar with ethnologue, and I wasn't sure about the public here, just the languages which are in contact there. And you see that high numbers here appear, not only for the Indo-European group, which is considered to be less diverse, but particularly for the Atlantic Congo group, and there the Mande languages are particularly important. So if you come back to the idea, which I also share, that the individuals and the encounters among the individuals play the role for the creolization process, then you have to take into consideration that there are so many different languages and that many of the people are plurilingual, so they use not only one language, but several ones, and they had these ways of expression Hugo was showing us, where things come together, we have only a vague idea of which origin they really are. So the same holds true in these contexts, and maybe even with a stronger power. It's true that most of the Mande languages are intelligibly understandable, but that doesn't tell you that the spoken language was the same. It wasn't the same. It was marked for these other languages in their repertoire. I took up Temne and Maniaco only as an example, but as you see on the right side, the Kwa languages are important in the Gold Coast. Not only these, but there are so many, and you have to be aware of that fact. Why are the Portuguese so expert? The Portuguese are expert because in their own country, that is a very small country. It's like Britannia. It's not a big country, Portugal. In their own country, they have a north-south divide. They experience a north-south divide, which means that there are double lexemes, which are used based on the Germanic or Celtic influence in the north, and that there are the same words, not the same words, but the same semantic meaning are expressed in the south with other words due to the influences of the Arabs and the close cohabitation with Spaniards and Arabs, and the Turks played also an important role. What makes the situation even more diverse or more complex, both, is the fact that the Dutch came over after the Portuguese, and you see the West India Company, and you see also that the British and English and the Danish were present. If you go to Accra today, you can visit all these places and you can imagine what happened there. And you see the French, and I entered it, were also in a way coming as Dutch, as migrants from France to Dutch, and then from the Netherlands to West Africa in the same places. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the other Creole, which is important in Guinea-Bissau Creoles. I tested my talk, and it was about 25 minutes. Sorry about that. I think the most important thing is to understand what kind of encounters there have to be in order that these kind of Creole results can appear. I'm looking forward to be more able to discover all these plurilingual influences we have there to be considered. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we have no time for questions or comments. We have to move on to the next presentation. And the next presenter